Have you ever truly known where your world ends and another's begins? Most people think they do. They see a fence, a driveway, a neatly manicured lawn, and assume that's the final word. I have never been one for assumptions. I collect truths, not the convenient kind, but the ones buried in surveyor's ink and the legalese of county registrars. While other people have workshops filled with sawdust and power tools, my sanctuary is my office, a room overflowing with plat maps, historical surveys, and the faint, dusty scent of aging paper. My husband, Alex, would often find me there, my brow furrowed in concentration, a magnifying glass in one hand and a copy of a century-old property deed in the other, tracing lines no one else could see. Alex, bless his heart, once called it my weird little obsession, but I've always defended it because I see what he doesn't. It's not just about land. For me, deciphering those documents is like archaeology. I'm not just reading coordinates and boundary markers. I'm unearthing the history of a place, the forgotten agreements and long-settled disputes of families who walked this ground generations before us. There's a beautiful precision to my passion, a dedication to irrefutable fact that I've always found deeply grounding. In a world full of noise and opinions, I find peace in the quiet, unyielding language of metes and bounds. It's the anchor of my personality, and I wouldn't change it for anything. This dedication was on full display when we bought our first home, a charming but slightly neglected craftsman in a neighborhood old enough to have secrets. The day we closed, I was more excited about the thick packet of title paperwork than the house keys. I spent that first week not unpacking boxes, but tracing the lineage of our little half-acre plot back to its original farmstead grant in 1892. It was during one of my late-night research sessions that I first showed Alex the old survey map. As he looked out the window at our new domain, his eyes drifted to the house next door, belonging to a woman we'd soon come to know as Carol. It always struck him as odd, the way her house was built. It sat at a peculiar angle to the road, its back corner so close to the gnarled, ancient oak tree on our side of the yard that its gutters nearly brushed the leaves. Following his gaze, I tapped a faded point on my map. "That oak," I murmured, almost to myself. "That's the original iron pin survey marker for our northeast corner. Everything on this side of it is ours." I said it as a simple statement of fact, a historical curiosity, but a small, cold knot of worry tightened in my stomach. I had a feeling my quiet facts were about to run headlong into Carol's very loud fictions. And run headlong they did. Our first few interactions with Carol were deceptively pleasant. She brought over a plate of slightly dry brownies, introduced herself with a booming laugh, and immediately launched into a litany of complaints about the previous owners of our house. They let the wisteria grow wild, their dog barked, they never swept their leaves. I smiled and nodded, but I could feel my own patience fraying. I have a low tolerance for unsubstantiated claims, even about something as trivial as leaf sweeping. Carol, we soon learned, was a woman who lived by the law of proximity. If something was close to her, it was, for all intents and purposes, hers. The sliver of our driveway her recycling bin occupied, the patch of sun on our front lawn her cat favored, and, most importantly, the perceived boundary between our properties. To her, the boundary wasn't a legal line. It was a flexible concept defined by her convenience and desires. The inciting incident, when it came, wasn't a dramatic confrontation, but a crisp, official-looking envelope taped to our front door. We had spent a small fortune installing a beautiful new cedar fence along the side of our property, carefully placing it a full foot inside the boundary line I had triple-checked on my surveys. It was a declaration of our space, a quiet reinforcement of where our world began. Carol had watched the entire installation with a sour expression, and 2 weeks later, her response arrived. It was a notice from the city's code enforcement office. An anonymous complaint had been filed, alleging that our new fence violated property line setbacks and was built without a proper permit. The notice informed us an inspector would be out in 3 days, and if the fence was found to be in violation, we would face fines and be required to tear it down. That was the moment something inside me broke. This was no longer a petty annoyance. This was an attack on our home, a deliberate attempt to dismantle our life here, piece by piece, using the city itself as a weapon. Alex, ever the pragmatist, was immediately worried. A fine? We have to tear it down? We just paid for it, he said, pacing the kitchen. Are you sure about the line? Absolutely sure? His doubt, though understandable, felt like a small betrayal. Yes, Alex, I'm sure, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. I wasn't just interested in defense anymore. I was done reacting. I walked into my office, the room that had once been my private sanctuary and now felt like our only armory. The scent of old paper no longer smelled like history. It smelled like ammunition. I unrolled the 1892 survey map and the more recent plat I had acquired, laying them side by side on my large desk. I pulled up a high-resolution satellite image of our neighborhood on my monitor. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I wasn't just looking for proof that our fence was legal. I was looking for a counterstrike. My eyes went to the boundary line, the one Carol was now formally disputing. I found the pinpoint on the map where the iron survey marker lay, swallowed by the roots of our oak. I followed the line, straight as a razor, across the satellite image. I saw the 6-foot buffer between my fence and the line. I saw the obvious encroachment of her patio, but then my gaze drifted to the house itself. That peculiar, jarring angle. It was a statement of defiance against the neat grid of the neighborhood. Using the scale on my map, I started taking measurements, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs. I measured the distance from the oak tree marker to the corner of our house. Then I measured the same distance on the satellite view. They matched. Then, with a trembling finger, I measured from the survey line to the back corner of Carol's oddly angled house. It wasn't just close. It wasn't just encroaching. According to the unyielding, irrefutable language of metes and bounds that I so revered, the entire back corner of Carol's house, her kitchen, from the look of it, was not on her property at all. For 20 years, she hadn't just been living next to us. She had been living on us. The war wasn't about a fence anymore. It was about her home, and the fact that a significant piece of it was built on a foundation of lies, right on top of our land. I stared at the screen, then at the map, then back at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a mistake. The lines were clear, the measurements precise. A giddy, terrifying sense of power surged through me. She hadn't just reported our fence. She had built her kitchen on our land. The cold dread I'd been living with for weeks evaporated, replaced by something white-hot and clarifying. She hadn't just drawn first blood. She had built her entire fortress on a lie. When Alex came in, he found me not in a panic, but strangely calm. He was holding a printout from the city website. I looked it up. Fences under 6 feet don't need a permit in our zone, and we're a foot inside the line. We're fine. That's good, I said, my voice even. I didn't look up from the map, but we're not going to need it. He paused, sensing the shift in me. What do you mean? The inspector is coming tomorrow. I know, I said, finally meeting his gaze, and we're going to be ready for him. But we're not going to defend, we're going to attack. I turned the monitor toward him, showing him the satellite image with the survey line I'd overlaid in a stark, unforgiving red. I pointed to where it sliced cleanly through Carol's kitchen. Alex was silent for a long time, his eyes flicking between the screen and the map on my desk. He was processing the data and the implications. Finally, a slow, grim smile spread across his face. "My God," he whispered, "she has no idea." The next morning, the city inspector, a tired-looking man named Mr. Henderson, arrived with his clipboard and measuring tape. As predicted, Carol was waiting on her crooked patio, arms crossed, the picture of smug civic duty. Alex and I met the inspector near our new fence. "So," Mr. Henderson sighed, "anonymous complaint about the setback." He gestured toward the fence. "Let's have a look." Carol called over, her voice dripping with false concern. "It's a real safety issue. Barely any room to get by. I'm sure you'll find it's not up to code." Alex opened his mouth to present the city code printout to start our defense, but I put a hand on his arm, stopping him. This was my moment. This was the opening she had given me. "Inspector," I said, my voice clear and steady, capturing his attention. "You're here to investigate a structure built-in violation of a property line setback, correct?" He nodded, looking slightly impatient. "That's the complaint, yes?" "Good," I said, "because there is a major violation here, but it's not our fence." I turned and walked back into the house, my heart pounding a steady, determined rhythm. I returned, holding the large, rolled-up plat map. I walked past Alex, past the inspector, and stepped down onto the grass, planting my feet firmly on the lawn. I faced Carol's house, unrolled the map with a sharp snap, and held it up for all three of them to see. "The original 1892 survey marker is at the base of this oak tree," I announced, my voice ringing with the certainty I'd honed for years. I pointed to the ancient trunk. "The legal boundary runs in a straight line from there, 10 feet past the edge of your patio." I let that sink in for a second before delivering the final, devastating blow. My finger traced the damning line on the map, and then I raised my arm, pointing directly at the corner of her house, which means, for the last 20 years, you've been making breakfast in my kitchen. The silence that followed was a physical thing. It pressed in on us, thick and suffocating. Carol's face, which had been a mask of smug righteousness, seemed to crumble. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Mr. Henderson, the inspector, looked from me to the map, then to the corner of Carol's house, his professional apathy finally cracking to reveal a flicker of stunned disbelief. That's absurd," Carol finally managed to hiss, her voice a reedy whisper. "You're insane, you're making this up." "Am I?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. I held up my phone, showing the satellite image with the stark red line of the property boundary. "This is the certified 1998 survey conducted for the previous owners of our home. It corroborates the original 1892 plat. You can see the county registrar's seal right here on the physical copy. The GPS coordinates are unambiguous. The survey marker is the oak. The line extends from there. Your patio encroaches by 10 feet, and the foundation of your rear addition, the kitchen and breakfast nook, is a full 8 feet over the line. It's not a matter of interpretation, it's simple geometry." Every word was a nail being hammered into Carol's coffin. She stared at the phone in my hand as if it were a snake. "That's a trick! A computer trick! You can't just draw a line on a picture." Mr. Henderson ignored her completely. He was now looking at the corner of her house with a new, critical eye. He saw what we saw, the impossible angle, the way it jutted out, defying the logic of the plot it was supposed to occupy. The truth, once pointed out, was glaringly obvious. The anonymous complaint she had weaponized against us had brought the law to her own doorstep, and it was about to kick the door in. "Ma'am," the inspector said to Carol, his voice now devoid of any weariness, replaced by a cold, official tone, "you filed a complaint about an illegal setback. I am now officially investigating a far more serious one." He gestured to her kitchen. "This is a major structural encroachment, the biggest I've ever seen." Carol's face went white. The triumphant smirk, the years of petty tyranny, all of it dissolved into pure, raw panic. "No," she stammered, shaking her head. "The builder 20 years ago, he said it was fine. You can't do this." I looked her dead in the eye, the fury I'd suppressed for weeks finally finding its voice. "You reported our fence. You attacked our home. You tried to use the system to bully and intimidate us. But you made one mistake. You assumed the facts were on your side." I folded the map slowly, deliberately. The rustle of the old paper was the only sound. "I collect truths, Carol, and the truth is, you're a trespasser. You have been for 20 years. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "I'm issuing a stop work order on any and all property modifications, effective immediately. And I am filing a formal report of a non-compliant structure." He looked at Carol, his expression grim. "You will be receiving an official notice. I advise you to retain legal counsel. If this is what it appears to be, the city will require the non-compliant portion of your house to be removed." at your expense. Removed. The word hung in the air like an executioner's axe. Demolition. He had used the word. Carol stared at her own kitchen, the place she cooked her meals, the foundation of her home, as if seeing it for the first time. It was no longer a part of her house. It was evidence, a crime scene. She stumbled back a step, her hand flying to her mouth, a choked, horrified sob escaping her. The war was over. We hadn't just won. We had achieved total victory, using nothing more than a dusty map and the unyielding power of a truth she had never bothered to check. The sound of Carol's sob was thin and sharp in the sudden quiet of the backyard. It was the sound of a balloon popping, a lifetime of blustering certainty, deflating into a ragged, helpless whimper. She stared at her kitchen, at the cheerful yellow paint, and the window box where her petunias now seemed to mock her, and it was as if she was seeing a ghost. Mr. Henderson, oblivious to the human tragedy and focused solely on the procedural one, was already making notes on his clipboard, his pen scratching with an air of finality. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at us. He was simply an agent of the system she had invoked, a system that was now turning on her with impersonal, grinding force. The white-hot rage that had carried me through the confrontation flickered and died, and the adrenaline crash that followed was dizzying. A cold wave washed through me, leaving me feeling hollowed out and strangely detached. We had won. It was a total, undeniable victory. But standing there on my lawn, with the certified map still feeling heavy in my hands, it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like standing at the epicenter of a detonation. The word the inspector used, removed, echoed in my mind. It was a clean, bureaucratic word for such a violent act. Demolition, wreckage, the destruction of a home. I looked at Alex. His jaw was still set, his expression grim, but when his eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of the same shock I felt. We had unleashed an avalanche to stop a snowball. The slam of Carol's door was a full stop. The inspector gave us a final, curt nod before leaving, his job done. We were left alone in the sudden, profound silence, the victors on a battlefield of our own making. We walked back into our house, but the threshold offered no relief. There was no triumphant toast, no sigh of vindication. Alex quietly took the plat map from my hands, rolled it up, and secured it with a rubber band. He looked at my office, then at the hall closet, and placed it in the back behind the winter coats, as if he were hiding a murder weapon. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Carol's face, not the smug, aggressive woman who had harassed us, but the broken, hollow-eyed stranger who had stumbled back into her house. The victory I had craved, the righteous power I had wielded, now felt like a toxic substance coating my tongue. We had won, but the prize was the knowledge that we had the power to utterly ruin someone. It was a vile, corrosive kind of power. I started to change. The door to my office, my sanctuary, remained closed. The passion that had once been a quiet, steady hum in our lives was gone. Alex walked in there one afternoon, looking for me. The air was stale. The maps on my desk lay collecting a thin film of dust. The scent of old paper, which I once found so grounding and historic, now smelled like decay. He looked at the intricate lines, the precise lettering, and I could tell he no longer saw my quirky hobby. He saw the architecture of devastation. These documents, this obsession he had always found so odd, had become tainted. It wasn't a tool for understanding the world anymore. It was a cudgel I had used to beat our neighbor into submission. One evening, I was standing at our living room window, staring at the dark shape of Carol's house. "I haven't looked at a survey in 2 weeks," I said, my voice quiet. I think I hate it now." I turned to Alex, my face etched with a deep, weary sadness. It was supposed to be about the truth. I just never thought the truth could be this ugly. In that moment, I realized the full extent of the damage. Carol had tried to take our fence, and I, in return, had taken her home. But in the process, I had lost something irreplaceable, the simple, beautiful peace I found in the quiet language of my maps. We had our land back, every last inch of it, but our home felt smaller than ever. The hollowness of our victory was a constant, unwelcome guest in our home. The silence from next door was louder than any of Carol's previous tirades. We had won the war, but the peace was a desolate, haunted thing. I drifted through our house like a ghost, my passion for history replaced by a deep disillusionment. The truth hadn't set anyone free. It had simply built a different kind of prison. It was this feeling, this sense of profound injustice that finally spurred me to action. 3 months later, the first crocuses of spring were pushing through the soil. The house next door was sold. We never saw Carol again after that day. We just heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she couldn't afford the legal battle or the demolition. The bank took the property, and the new owners, a young family, bought it as is, fully aware of the encroachment and the steep discount it afforded them. The back corner of the house, her kitchen, was torn down before they even moved in, leaving a strange, clean scar of new siding and a suddenly spacious-looking yard. The silence was finally broken, replaced by the distant laughter of children. My own healing began slowly. My office remained dormant for a long time. The door stayed ajar, but I rarely went in. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Alex found me standing at my desk, the spring sunlight illuminating the dust motes in the air. I had an old plat map unrolled, but my posture was different. There was no tension in my shoulders, no furrow in my brow. I was just looking. He came and stood beside me, and I pointed to a spot on the map, then gestured out the window toward the far end of our street. "The new family, the Millers, they're thinking of putting up a fence," I said quietly. "Their property backs up against the greenbelt, but the original grant for that strip of parkland is ambiguous." I traced a faint line with my finger. It wasn't a line of attack, but of inquiry. "I thought I'd digitize this in the Parks Dedication Survey, overlay them, and just give it to them, and to the City Parks Department. So everyone knows where things stand from the beginning, so there are no surprises down the road." I looked from the map to Alex's face. He smiled, a soft, gentle expression. "I think that's a great idea." He saw it too. The passion was back, but it was softer now, tempered by the knowledge of its weight. It wasn't about the irrefutable fact anymore. It was about the responsible use of it. I wasn't collecting truths to win arguments. I was sharing them to prevent them. I was using my skill not to draw a battle line, but to build a foundation for peace. In that quiet moment, I knew we would be okay. We had learned that the most important boundaries aren't the ones buried in surveyor's ink, but the ones we draw around our own hearts, the lines that separate being right from being whole. A few weeks later, I invited the Millers over for coffee. I was nervous, afraid of how I might be perceived, as the neighborhood crank with my dusty maps, a new version of Carol. But when the Millers sat at our kitchen table, I didn't unroll the survey with a snap of authority. I laid it out gently, alongside a modern printout from the city. I didn't point or declare, I invited. "I just wanted you to have this," I said, my voice soft. "When you decide to build your fence, this old survey of the parkland is a little clearer than the city's copy. It shows the original iron stake was set right here." I tapped a point, which gives you about 5 more feet of yard than you probably think you have. "It's a gift from the people who first settled this land. I just thought you should know." Mr. Miller leaned over the map, his eyes wide with genuine fascination, not suspicion. "Wow," he said. "I never would have known. We were just going to go by the city's GIS line. This is incredibly helpful. Thank you." His wife, Sarah, looked from the map to me, and she smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was warm and real. "That is so kind of you," she said. "Honestly, we've been so worried about getting everything right." In that moment, watching them, I felt the last of the icy dread melt away. I wasn't brandishing a weapon. I was offering a gift. I was using my passion not to end a dispute, but to prevent one before it could ever begin. I was building a bridge, not a wall. When the Millers left, armed with clarity and gratitude, I walked back into my office and stood for a long moment. I ran my hand over the surface of a rolled-up plat, and this time, when I looked at Alex, the weariness was gone from my eyes. The sanctuary had been restored. Our life found a new rhythm. We learned that a truth without compassion is just a fact, and facts can be brutal things. The world is full of lines, sharp and unyielding, but a home, a community is built in the spaces between them. It's built with kindness, with shared knowledge, with the quiet decision to offer a map as a gift instead of a threat. The whole experience taught me that the most important boundaries aren't the ones you find on a deed. They're the ones you have to draw for yourself, the line between defending your peace and destroying someone else's, between being right and being whole. We found our peace again, not by reclaiming every inch of our land, but by rediscovering the grace within its borders.